Kazakhstan, the lost money. The $10 billion allocated from the National Fund for Anti-Crisis Programs have vanished without a trace. The president's administration turns a blind eye while society suffers from the widespread corruption and abuse of power. No country for old men. Kazakhstan's veterans have to enter the unfair battle with misunderstandings and corruption of the officials when it comes to single industry towns and other state programs. Young faces of the ruling party. The country's ruling party Nur Otan gets a facelift while holding on to the old and tried experienced members. Keep fighting on. Aliyat Uzbekova paid a 1.5-hour visit to Vladimir Kozlov in the Petropavlovsk prison.
Hello, I am Asylbek Abdulov and you are watching Vlast KZ on kplus.
The head of state often likes to say that the economy comes first before politics in Kazakhstan's development scenario. Nursultan Nazarbayev became the main economic newsmaker last week by making a somewhat sensational statement. On Wednesday, during the meeting in the president's palace, he surprised everyone by declaring that $10 billion allocated from the National Fund for Kazakhstan for the anti-crisis program are gone, and we still do not see any results. People present at the meeting seemed more shocked not by the financial loss of $10 billion, but by the publicity President Nazarbayev chose to give the episode. No one expected the head of state to actually expose the matter to the public and do it personally. On the other hand, millions of ordinary citizens were quite shocked by the loss of funds, which is slightly less than the country's net foreign debt of over $12 billion. Prior to the president's revelation, the National Bank estimated the assets of the National Fund at $57.8 billion, although only according to preliminary data. The new information brought by the president seemed more correct and up to date.
Нацбанком в $57,8 миллиардов.
During the government session, Nursultan Nazarbayev stated that $10 billion allocated from the National Fund for Anti-Crisis Measures have disappeared. Nazarbayev generally expressed his discontent during the session in a strange way. He seemed to be asking rhetorical questions as if he was acting before the audience, lecturing his subordinates. The government and the parliament have moved from Almaty. What happened to the buildings? Zhamishov, I'm asking you, did you even bother to figure out who raided them? Why 200,000 square meters are being leased? Thousands more square meters are taken by various Republican state enterprises, agencies and joint stock companies. Just sit down, no need to explain. Nobody answered the question about the money that simply disappeared from the National Fund, which has been the talk of the town this week. So from now on, if anyone asks what happened to $10 billion, the money is gone, would be considered a very legit answer. Our laws and regulations clearly define that the president is the only person in charge of all decision-making related to National Fund, while the National Bank and the Ministry of Finances shall only manage the fund. I believe that part of the funds was transferred to offshore accounts to enrich whoever is involved in this. Part of it was unwisely invested. There are plenty of reasons, really. Let's say the state budget is theoretically accountable to Parliament, while the National Fund, which to date have accumulated nearly $55 billion, reports to a small group of individuals. In fact, the National Fund is replenished from the much more important sources than the state budget. Official transfers from the national budget defined as the excess of the actual income from organizations of material sector over their annual output, approved by the laws on national budget for respective fiscal year. Official transfers from the national budget are determined by revenues from the privatization of state property related to the mining and manufacturing industries. Official transfers from the national budget calculated at the rate of 10% of the projected amount of income to the state budget from the organization of material sector. Official transfers from the local budget determined by income from the sale of agricultural land. Investment income from the management of the National Fund of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Other revenues and income not prohibited by the legislation of the Republic of Kazakhstan. The question about 1/5 of the money from the National Fund that disappeared can be addressed to very specific individuals. In fact, the president knows these people very well. According to the Facebook post by politician Bulat Abilov, these individuals were present during the session. $10 миллиардов выделено на борьбу с кризисом. He said that they assured him that these money will be returned, yet the money cannot be returned because they are in fact partially plundered. He also says that the banks are operating and don't ask for money. The BT Bank recently requested $3 billion for restructuring purposes. It is the second restructuring they hold, which means that money are stolen and used inefficiently. The new managers who became in charge in 2009 demonstrated their complete incompetence. Even the grand amounts of invested money didn't help the situation. There was some kind of behind-the-scene game initiated during that session, says the director of Public Policy Research Center. The message about the missing billions was addressed personally to someone whose job is currently unstable. The statement is only the tip of the iceberg. We don't see the rest of it. Perhaps it's some kind of showdown between different elite groups who are well aware of their transgressions. The president, Nazarbayev, didn't try to find out what happened to the money from the national fund. Instead, he turned his attention to the pension funds. He was outraged by the fact that pension funds passively use the money of depositors. These are all citizens of Kazakhstan who lay aside the money for their old age. He suggested establishing a single state pension fund and transfer the money of all future retirees there. This news sparked a bit of discontent on Facebook. The following has been posted by the ex-deputy chairman of Samruk-Kazana Fund on his page. There are a few thousands of smart, educated and unemployed people out there, let alone the brokers. Now they want to get hold of pension funds. With days, the intelligence level of state financial experts goes down. Anvar is not an exception. Aydeke, so they have to be supported by the pension funds. Is this a real argument? I meant to say that the lack of integrity and the level of stupidity of political advisors has downgraded to the level of a criminal offense. All this expansion of state capitalism is driven only by one bureaucratic logic: to nationalize the costs and privatize the profits. It is worth to notice that one of the founders of the existing pension system in Kazakhstan, Oras Jandosov, supported the president's initiative, sacrificing his own principles. Yes, I'm one of the developers. Of course, it is sad to admit my own mistakes, but I have no choice because everything is obvious. There were practically no improvements made to our pension savings over 15 years of management of private pension funds. The head of the Pension Funds Association of Kazakhstan, Aydar Alibayev, tends to disagree. According to him, there is quite a sound competitive environment established in the pension system of Kazakhstan these days. It is very unlikely that forming a single state fund would drastically increase the profitability of the sector. The officials who will manage the pension fund don't seem to be very trustworthy. Over time, our Kazakh officials prove to be inefficient as managers, which cannot be trusted. It is least likely that all of a sudden they would provide the high profitability, especially amidst the current deficiency of financial instruments. However, the engine of the state machine turned on immediately the very next day after the statement made by the national leader. The head of the National Bank, Grigory Marchenko, had issued an order. The document puts a strict limit over the scope of transactions from pension funds for an indefinite period of time. The fragile stock market of Kazakhstan also reacted instantly with a huge number of market sale orders. Pension funds started getting rid of securities, causing a share price slump in the number of largest companies. In fact, mostly the local companies involved in the People's IPO project received damage. Our source, who participates in stock exchange, preferred to remain incognito, voicing his concerns. Translating his words literally means that we as a nation issue a decree to nationalize all private funds into a single state fund. It means that the market model where pension funds used to compete among each other, looking for the best investment ideas and the ways to increase the income, is instantly eliminated. This worsens the investment climate because foreign investors realize that the state owns most of the money, which could change the pricing of any shares on the Kazakh stock exchange. That implies unequal market conditions. The vivid example would be the undermined investment rating of Kazakhstan caused by the nationalization of BT Bank. At the end of the week, the newly appointed Minister of Economy, Yerbulat Dasayev, tried to justify himself. According to him, $10 billion have disappeared and could be returned should they sell 3 troublesome banks of Kazakhstan. The problem is that nobody wants to buy these banks even after the infusion of huge money. Yet, that is a whole different story.
Многое в нашем государстве пропадает, воруется и
Much is
проходит
lost, stolen,
бесследно.
embezzled, or just vanishes in Kazakhstan these days. The situation was perfectly described by the late 19th, early 20th century Russian writer and journalist Vladimir Gilerovsky, who once said that, quote, Russia is plagued by 2 misfortunes, the power of darkness at the bottom and the darkness of power at the top, end quote. This pretty much describes modern Kazakhstan. Nazarbayev's economy comes before politics somewhat explains it, contributing to the non-transparent society and uncontrollable authorities. The vanished billions is the direct result of that. The elites will not think twice when opportunities like these arise. To go along with Nazarbayev's trend, let us now switch gears to politics.
Тут за ценой не постоят. Стало много разговоров о возвращении в Казахстан политэмигрантов Галымжана
Some of the recent rumors circulating in the country suggested the return of Галымжан Жакиянов and Akizhan Kajagildian from political immigration. Perhaps it is just small talk, but many say it is not coincidence. Both men were seen back in the press spotlight yet again. The ex-chairman of the Movement of Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan gave an interview to Forbes on the eve of the 11th anniversary of the organization's famous January rally.
Вышло интервью экс-председателя Демвыбора Казахстана Галымжана Жакиянова. I do
not rule out my possible return to politics. I still hold strong interest in it, but there is a difference between interest and actual political activity, end quote. Галымжан Жакиянов followed this hint with a far stronger message saying, quote, I sincerely hope that 2013 will become the onset of renovation in Kazakhstan. Our country deserves a better future, and I believe it is inevitable, end quote.
Конец цитаты. Ключевые понятия в этом тексте.
There are three key moments here, namely Жакиянов is returning to politics, the renewal of the country, and finally the country deserves a better future. The fans of the activist read between the lines that the return of their idol to politics and home will automatically link the other two concepts, the renovation of the country and getting a better future that the country deserves. As always, the opposition is keeping its hopes high.
И получение страной лучшего, которого достойно. It
should be noted that this was the first interview Галымжан Бадылжанович gave in 6 long years of silence. In August 2002, the Democratic Choice leader was sentenced to 7 years in prison for abuse of office as the head of the Pavlodar region. In January 2006, he was released on parole and left Kazakhstan 2 years later.
Сегодня, когда мы
At a time when we are experiencing an economic climb, we are obligated to think about our future. In other words, there is a danger we may fall victim to this euphoria and come to the realization that at one point our political system will become unstable.
Предоставляется члену политсовета ДВК Галымжану Жакиянову.
Мы должны все призвать наши власти.
We must call on our authorities to finally face the problems of ordinary citizens, who in turn will solve their own problems.
Народ уж сам решит свои проблемы.
The return of Akizhan Kajagildian has been on the radar for the last 2 years. It was always supposed to happen as the backdraft of the persecution of the long-hated enemy of the president's office, former Nazarbayev's son-in-law Rahat Aliyev. Here, Kajagildian makes a perfect ally for the president's men, since he is likely to hold a long list of complaints against Aliyev. In several of his interviews, the former prime minister publicly wished for Aliyev to confess to making false accusations against him, which would finally acquit the politician. I was slightly surprised by the steps that the authorities took to hold on to power. I believe the regime overestimated my threat level. Moreover, the regime is much more dangerous to itself rather than me being in the country. Of course, I live and earn money here, but I want to go home because I love my Semipalatinsk, wherever I am and wherever I was in the past when I was free to move around my small town. The president's office seems to keep its interest in Akizhan Kajagildian only due to shared hatred towards Rahat Aliyev and little more. Hardly anyone at the top will risk giving him an office or even allowing to lead the state-controlled constructive opposition, knowing his temper and political charisma. Although so much time has passed since Kajagildian's departure, no one actually knows whether he has changed. One thing is clear. The man has a strong sense of nostalgia and really wants to visit his father's grave in Semey. The prospect of an arrest prevented him from doing this before, but the obstacle has been removed now, at least according to some reports. Some social network messages even suggest the return could happen as early as the end of January. The circumstances will not suddenly change. What Kajagildian will actually do in Kazakhstan is anyone's guess, though.
Сейчас, судя по некоторой информации, этому уже ничего не мешает. Не исключено, что сообщают об этом давние
It is possible the
соратники
message was left by Akizhan Kazhageldyin's associates from the once prominent Republican People's Party of Kazakhstan, but the probability of his return is actually quite slim. One can assume that Kazhageldyin's supporters are engaged in wishful thinking following the news of a possible return of Galamjan Zhakiyanov. The former Prime Minister, Akizhan Kazhageldyn, was sentenced in absentia to 10 years in prison back in 2001. This case led to other questionable trials with political overtones involving the new set of President Nazarbayev's opponents. The following year saw the conviction of Democratic Choice co-chairman Galamjan Zhakiyanov and Mukhtar Ablazov, with the Democratic Choice successor Al-Ghab party leader Vladimir Kozlov following a decade later.
Сомнительным судам с политическим подтекстом. Все нормально. Это не было судом. Это не был суд.
Everything is fine. This was not a trial. The real trial is ahead of us. What just happened was a fabricated trial and a crime. Kozlov was arrested 1 year ago on charges related to Zhanaozian violence. At that time, he was sentenced to 7.5 years, and the appeals committee of the Mangistau Regional Court upheld the ruling in November. The wife of the opposition leader visited him in prison last week.
Заседание было 17 января, то есть буквально пару дней назад.
Our date took place on January 17th, or just a few days ago. The criminal code allows convicts the right to visitations. Vladimir has the right to 4 long and 4 short visitations.
Он имеет право на 4 длительных и 4 краткосрочных свидания. Выглядит он нормально. Это успокаивает нас.
He looks fine, which comforts me. He doesn't have any bruises or anything like that. He's spry and bold. I'm guessing that they are required to have crew cuts. They all wear identical robes. In other words, everyone looks the same.
Наверное, какое-то тоже требование, да? Они все коротко подстрижены, одеты все в одинаковую робу, то есть, ну, все как один. Так называемые, не знаю, блатные, да, как, допустим, в остальных тюрьмах.
Everyone complies with harsh regime. There's no one above the rules like in other prisons. Nobody sleeps until the afternoon or gets exempt from performing certain tasks. Everyone rises at 6. Everyone goes to the yard to exercise. Later, everyone has breakfast. Everything is harsh, but within the law.
Достаточно жесткое, но в рамках закона. В колонии сидят, знаете, очень молодые люди.
The colony is populated by very young men, 30 years and younger. I'd say more than 90% of the convicts fall under that category. He's the oldest in his group, so he's referred to as Uncle Vova or Uncle Volodya. Some address him formally, others informally. In other words, he was accepted well. His entire day is occupied from 6 a.m. without a single spare move. Everything is planned and precise. There is no such thing where someone would move around the colony premises alone.
Там нет такого, что ты один пошел где-то по территории колонии передвигаешь, такого нет. К Владимиру Ивановичу заходили адвокаты, они обсудили с ним моменты кассационной жалобы.
Vladimir Ivanovich was visited by his lawyers to discuss the appeal, which will be submitted any day now to the Mangistau Regional Court. Of course, I personally do not harbor any illusions that the appeals board will help change things. We all know that the trial over oil workers was a formality, so I presume our trial will be the same.
Все знаем, как прошел суд над нефтяниками, да, что это была формальность, поэтому я предполагаю, что наш суд будет таким же формальным. Живу я пока в квартире, это наша с Володей квартира, единственное жилье.
For now, I live in our apartment. It is our only residence which is legally not subject to confiscation, although the issue is unresolved at this stage. The apartment is seized. All objects inside are also classified and seized. I receive daily phone calls from judicial enforcement agents promising to confiscate the apartment any day now. Thus, I cannot insist that the apartment would be left in my possession. I occupy it for now, but I have a feeling it is a temporary occupation.
Поэтому говорить о том, что вот эта квартира как бы останется за мной, я буду там жить, я не могу. Я понимаю, что это не может длиться вечно, да, что невозможно.
I live on the savings that I had. I have relatives. Volodya has relatives. We have friends who support me. I understand I cannot live on their handouts forever, so as soon as we get acclimated and figure out the schedule for visitations and what can we do, the issue of employment will come up sooner or later.
Я не хочу заниматься никакой там общественно-политической деятельностью.
I'd like to work anywhere except for the social and political field. 2012 was a very tough year for my family and myself personally. It was the year of trials, stress and disappointment. I became disappointed in a lot of people and certain ideas.
И год разочарования. Ну, все говорят 7,5 лет, да, мы понимаем, что да, человеку дали 7,5 лет.
Everyone says 7.5 years. We understand that it is too much, but I never thought about when will the day of his release take place. I received a letter from the Correctional System Committee. I read it and I was shocked. His imprisonment and release dates were January 23, 2012 to July 23, 2019. I've never even given it a thought that it would be 2019. It was quite sad to realize that it was such a distant date, but I still hope that we will do everything in our powers to release him earlier. For his part, Vladimir Ivanovich will try not to violate the regime and do everything he can to be released under conditional terms or into colonial settlements. We discussed all possible options and will do everything we can to set him free earlier.
Возможно, я не знаю, выйти на условно-досрочное, на колонию в поселение.
Turuzbekova was granted a 1.5-hour visit. That is actually quite a lot compared to 10 to 15 minutes they were given at Aktau temporary detention ward, so that is progress. Turuzbekova also noted that Kozlov wishes to receive more letters from the outside. Thus, anyone who wants to show some moral support to the convicted politician can write him at the following address: Vladimir Kozlov, Institution ES 164-3, 100, Первая Заречная Street, 150000, Petropavlovsk, North Kazakhstan region. Next on Vlast KZ.
Хроника, факты, комментарии.
No country for old men. Kazakhstan's veterans have to enter the unfair battle with misunderstandings and corruption of the officials when it comes to single industry towns and other state programs. Young faces of the ruling party. The country's ruling party Nuratan gets a facelift while holding on to the old and tried experienced members. Stay with us. Vlast KZ will return with more in a couple of minutes.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublicas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы. В Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook. facebook.com/respublica.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
В Астане на неделе завершились кадровые перестановки и структурные
The reshuffling and restructuring started earlier in the month were finally completed this week in Astana. The appointment of Kairat Kazhamzharov as the Security Council Secretary filled the remaining vacancy in the President's administration.
Организационная структура теперь выглядит так. Руководство представляют
The organization structure now includes the leaders and Secretary of State Marat Tajan, Chief of Staff Karim Masimov, and Assistant to the President and Secretary of Security Council Kairat Kazhamzharov.
У руководителя администрации Масимова 3 заместителя.
Masimov, as the head of administration, now has 3 deputies: Bahlan Mailabayev, Bahit Sultanov, and Gabidullah Abdrahimov, transferred from the Agency for the Protection of Competition and Bolashak Scholarship winner of 1997. As a deputy chief of staff, he replaced another Bolashak alum, Baurjan Baybek, a pianist with classical music education and a major in international economy. The new deputy chairman of the ruling party is only 38. Thus, according to the plans of Nursultan Nazarbayev, this change will facilitate the infusion of young blood in the party veins, as Abdrahimov possesses youthful enthusiasm and creativity, so important for the country.
The newly appointed vice chairman of Nuratan, Baurjan Baybek, stayed quite a reaction in Kaznet. Active users divided into 2 groups. Some are very happy about the appointments of a fresh young official. Others speculate about the friendly relations between Baybek's father and the president. Turns out Kıdırgali Baybek and Nursultan Nazarbayev are the former classmates. Baurjan Baybek has been working in the circle of the president's close associates for nearly 10 years. First, he held various positions, including deputy head of presidential administration, then chief of presidential protocol. On January 17, 2013, he became a second man in Nuratan party. He's a young man, not even 40 years old. He works as the deputy chief of staff for about 4 years. He's been to all the regional branches of our party. All mayors know him. I hope he will contribute towards the infusion of young blood into our party. It's important for the country to have them introduce the enthusiasm and creativity of young men. Baurjan Baybek is in fact full of creativity and enthusiasm. He wrote a first textbook on the state protocol of Kazakhstan, listing all the rules for meetings of the leadership. In addition, Baybek initiated the translation of several Hollywood movies and cartoons into Kazakh language. They are sold out quickly. The new deputy of Nuratan developed creativity in his childhood. He graduated with honors from Kulash Baysitova School of Music for Gifted Children. The school principal proudly shows the board of honor with the graduate of a special piano department, Baurjan Baybek. The other day, the captions on the board were updated with information about the new appointment of their former student. The news that Baurjan became a deputy head of the ruling party surprised nobody in his school. Of course, it's a shame that he decided not to proceed with music on professional level. I'm confident that he would have achieved great results as a pianist. He was very energetic, just like the rest of the boys. Yet he was very serious and goal-oriented. Gifted children stand out in the crowd. You can tell if a person is gifted and whether he would be successful in life. That's the kind of graduate he was. Baurjan Baybek doesn't forget about his school and the teachers by visiting them. From time to time, teachers recall what a charming and intelligent child Baurjan was. He used to repeatedly win the competition for young pianists during his student years. It is worth to notice his great artistic imagination. His teacher of literature admired his ability to write perfect essays. He certainly used his imagination in musical performances as well. He had a musical intuition. He loved to sing when playing the piano. It is very likely of Baurjan to sit down at the piano, play Schubert and sing, says his classmate Yerlan Mansurov. Following the graduation, school friends parted ways. Yerlan chose a music career working as a teacher at his own department of general piano, whereas Baurjan went to Germany where he received a pedagogical and diplomatic education. I know that he is doing sports, including swimming. He speaks several languages. I remember how during the visit of Gerhard Schröder to our country, Baurjan was translating at the meeting with Nazarbayev. I watched him on TV, easily translating the conversation between 2 presidents from German into Kazakh. Baurjan Baybek learned German in Goethe Institute and a higher school of Lubbock. He managed to graduate from 2 prestigious European universities through international scholarship Bolashak. Upon graduation, Baybek worked at the Embassy of Kazakhstan in Germany. Then he was transferred to presidential administration. In every interview, Baurjan refers to Nazarbayev as the main reformer of Kazakhstan, stressing that working with him is a great honor. Baurjan Baybek traced the embodiment of family values even in the president's message regarding development strategy of 2050. Each family has a plan. Nothing can be achieved without it, simply as how to spend the money, whether it's buying a car or taking kids to resort. Everyone has different plans. Therefore, the government should also have a specific plan and we all need to stick to it. From now on, Baurjan Baybek will be implementing a specific plan of Akorda in the ruling party. The work in Nuratan will be some sort of political proficiency test for him, experts say. Looking back, we've even had 29-year-old mayors and ministers, including Zhakyanov, Ablazov, Kaparov and Sarsimbayev. Of course, a lot has to do with personality and experience. The age isn't the main criterion to assign anybody for a high position. Executives must be very knowledgeable in various fields, including practical knowledge, work experience in the regions, understanding the specifics of Kazakhstan and decision-making. Rasul Jumali supports the accession of young members into Kazakhstan's political elite. However, he is very skeptical about the fact that all of the young executives are graduates of the presidential program Bolashak, while their knowledge received abroad is not always applicable to the realities of Kazakhstan. Besides, the authorities don't explain the reason behind the appointment of a person to a managerial position. When the authorities assign young people, they don't provide enough reasoning for their decision. Which criterion defines the most suitable candidate? No matter how genius the person is, immediately solving a set of problems without systematic changes isn't a solution. There should be additional measures involved, including systematic, organizational and personnel management. Perhaps then it would be effective. Baurjan Baybek has never worked in the regions, nor is he experienced in business and economic sectors. He established himself as the deputy head of the presidential administration, taking part in certification of civil servants and the formation of an elite corps of executives. Nevertheless, Nur Otan party itself supported and approved Baurjan Baybek to be appointed the second man in the party. The party consists of the members of our society, and the more they understand the politics, the more beneficial it would be for ordinary people during the transformation that take place in our country. He is not even 40 yet, but he shall contribute his education-based experience. He might be young, but he already has an experience of protocol work in the Office of Executive Personnel, which is a serious step for us to perfect our party. There's no clear opinion among the experts regarding the appointment of the deputy head of Nur Otan, Baurjan Baybek. There are two versions. Either Baurjan Baybek was temporarily appointed to this position, or he is only in transit for a much higher position. Internet users have already been speculating that Baybek will become the prime minister and even refer to him as the possible successor of the president.
The country's veterans are standing up against Kazakhmys Corporation by calling it a hotbed of corruption in Kazakhstan. The statement was made at a meeting with the governor of the region and the company's CEO, Eduard Ogay. In response, the latter threatened a libel suit against Zheskazgan elders, but later changed his mind and chose systemic tools for targeting specifically the chairman of the Veterans Board, Murky Akpanbetov. The retaliation is happening through the pressure of regional authorities and the Zheskazgan branch of the ruling party, Nur Otan. The dissenters were not allowed to join the next meeting of the Veterans Board, where regional administration and party members orchestrated Akpanbetov's inevitable dismissal from his position. One of the veteran dissidents was hit by a policeman while trying to enter the hall. To stop further tension, the elders wisely decided to leave the premise. It is quite painful to feel their humiliation, since almost all of the veterans are of the same age as the president. They come from one country and one generation, but share quite a different story, fate and destiny.
Leave the room, please. Why? The plenary meeting of the Veterans Council will be held here. If there are reporters here, turn your cameras off. Why? The independent media and dissenting elders were not invited to the Council of Veterans held by Nur Otan members in their Zheskazgan branch. The chairman of the non-governmental organization, Murky Akpanbetov, was declared undesirable after the meeting with the regional governor, where he heavily criticized Kazakhmys company, naming it a hotbed of corruption. Therefore, many social activists believe that Kazakhmys uses Nur Otan to keep the dissenting elder off. Everybody, including me and reporters, suffered a lot from the corporation, but we will never let anybody offend our respected elders who are in Council of Veterans. 79-year-old Murky Akpanbetov is one among many in Zheskazgan who are dissatisfied with local corporation activity. During 20 years of active mining in the region, Kazakhmys has done little for the prosperity of the city. Now, such cities as subsidized Zheskazgan is likely to cause a lot of trouble for the new Ministry of Regional Development. The new Ministry of Regional Development was established by the President's order on January 16, 2013. The structure, which includes the Agency for Land Resources Management, as well as the Agency for Construction and Communal Services, was delegated some functions and authority from the Ministry of Economic Development. Each agency carries out its own duties and tasks. However, regions lack well-coordinated work, and each agency tends to protect its own interests once different sectors overlap. We have a lot of unsolved issues, including land distribution and construction. From now on, all agencies will report to a single center and will work in the same direction of regional development. The government has adopted various policy initiatives to trigger regional development, including 2 large-scale state programs on drinking water, rural area development, the roadmap, as well as the development of single industry towns. Over the last 10 years, huge amounts of budget funds have been spent on the implementation of these projects. Thus, adoption of another state program on regional development as well as the establishment of another ministry will hardly surprise anyone. In my opinion, the Ministry of Regional Development will just duplicate the work of local administration and the Ministry of Agriculture. It is also said to perform auditing functions. But in this case, who will monitor the distribution of the budget funds then? According to economist Bulat Duysimbai, in their own regions, such large companies as Aktobe-Munaygas, Adjib, Kazakhmys will continue dictating terms to local governors. Analysts say that nowadays the authorities have lost touch with the people. Political parties are reluctant to work due to the lack of fair elections. The Senate, composed of regional governors, has turned into a notary office. The local authority is not doing any better. After the tragic events in Janauzen, the government, which is unable to implement democratic reforms, fails to approach common people. The new ministry is one of the attempts to be close to population, but it will also fail, as it is not clear what tasks it will carry out. The new structure will just enlarge the list of other useless and improper ministries in the country. Even the neighboring settlements of the largest city Almaty are rather difficult to get to in winter. Our reporting crew got stuck on the way towards Kapan village. An emergency team with their special equipment turned out to suffer the same problem. The snow will be removed from the road, however the new snow will be driven by the elms growing on the side of the road. Something must be done about these trees as they do not allow to widen the road. There are about 10 villages towards Kapal. Our companions say they have suffered bad winter roads for many years. We hardly have any special equipment to remove snow from roads. One bulldozer and a loader can cope with only one lane. An ambulance will never come. Students who come home for winter holidays cannot go back and have to wait for the roads to be cleared. Journalist Geroy Khan Kastaubayev captured the picture of the interstate section between Atarao and Aktau routes of national importance during his summer driving expedition to the regions. On their 2 jeeps, reporters covered 14,500 kilometers in 40 days. They witnessed a typical picture of modern Kazakhstan province of deserted prairies without any cattle and numerous destroyed settlements. We have the Ministry of Agriculture, which just kept destroying villages for 20 years. If the new ministry does perform its functions, it will be fine. In my opinion, it should pay more attention to human capital assets, health and quality of knowledge. Unfortunately, our team got stuck in snowdrifts on the halfway to the Almaty region and had been waiting for 5 hours when a road service finally showed up. We were told to go back as there was no point in waiting. According to the loader driver Babash, the road workers were able to clear only 12 kilometers of the interstate in 20 hours. In the summer, windshields must be placed in the direction from which the wind blows, as it is usually done for railways where trains do not stop even if the roads are not clear. But in our case, we have to spend a lot of diesel fuel on cleaning the roads. Babash Algazin has been working in road service for 30 years and says that nothing has changed over this time. He wonders whether he will get rid of at least one of the 2 evils, the fools or bad roads in the 21st century.
This was Vlast KZ on KpLus. Join us next Monday for more trends, highlights, and a look into personalities of the week. Goodbye.